Hey, what's going on, guys? That's right, we're actually finally ready to start doing tutorials in modding, at least in regards to stuff that I actually know how to do. So, as you may have seen over the last couple of weeks, I have started my own project working on different attachments for vanilla weapons. Haven't exactly moved on to complete standalone weapons yet, however, I've gotten this pretty down, so I feel confident spreading that knowledge to you guys and teaching you the things that I've been learning myself. It's been one of my dreams to get into mod creation, and after learning how to do it, it's pretty simple if you take your time and be careful, so I figure I might as well pass some of that information on to you guys if you're aspiring mod authors as well. So today, we're going to learn specifically how to add your own attachment, a custom attachment into the game. We won't just be cloning an existing attachment, we'll actually be making one from scratch. And you're going to need 4 things for this to work. Starting with your mesh, which we can see here. This is going to be your actual 3D object. You're going to need materials, which is going to be a BGSM file made of your textures. We're going to need textures, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then finally, an ESP file, which is what's going to be made in the creation kit. So those are all the things that we're going to be going over today, as well as all of the tools that you will need. And I will have links to all of those tools down below as well. So for starters is going to be your 3D model. So here you can see we are in Blender. Now you can obviously use something a little bit pricier like 3ds Max, but I'm assuming if you're watching a tutorial, you're probably starting off with the free software, which is Blender. So here we've already gone ahead and made my site. This isn't a tutorial on how to 3D model. This is just implementing it into the game. So if that's what you're looking for, then this definitely isn't the right place for that. You're going to want to go check a Blender tutorial to learn how to actually make the stuff. All right, so going off of the assumption that you already have your 3D model ready to go, there are a couple of steps to get this model actually ready for Fallout. The thing about Fallout is that it really likes triangles. If you have any squares, pentagons, or any other shapes, it's not going to translate very well into the game, especially when it comes to texturing. So the very first step is we're going to triangulate this thing. So you're going to select this in object mode. You're going to head over to your modifiers, and you're going to grab the triangulate modifier. We're going to click that, make sure that minimum vertices is at 4, and then apply it. And now you'll see that everything is made out of triangles. Any square, any particular shape that we had is now a triangle, which is great. That's exactly what we needed. So that's pretty much it for the mesh. Now we actually have to convert this into a usable mesh, which will be a NIF. Now, before we move on, we do need to quickly discuss textures. There are a lot of different ways to apply textures, one of which would be through GIMP or Photoshop, which is what I assume most of you would be using. In this tutorial, we will actually be doing it in Substance Painter. However, a lot of the same concepts will apply. That being said, if you're going to use something like Photoshop or GIMP, you're going to want to get a UV map of this guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our object, head over to UV editing. Here we can see our object. We're going to click Control A. We're going to assign scale. And then we're going to press Tab to head into our vertices mode. We're going to select them all, and you can see a big mess over there on the UV map. We're going to click UV right here. And we're going to click Smart UV Project. We're going to leave the angle limit as it is and click OK. And there we have a much nicer, more organized UV map. Now, if you want to take this UV map and export it into either GIMP or Photoshop, you're going to highlight, UV, export UV layout, and then you can choose where you're going to place it. That being said, if you are using Substance Painter, which it does have a free trial if you want to try it out, we will do a different method. So now that we have our object ready to go, we're going to export the object itself. Head back to the modeling, select our object, file, export as wavefront.obj, and then select where you're saving it to. Once you've completed your export, you should be done with Blender. Moving on, we need to get this object turned into a NIF. So you're going to open up Outfit Studio. Again, link will be in the description to download that. We're going to drag over our object here, which we have my closed red dot object, and we're just going to drag it straight into Outfit Studio. We're going to say yes, and then there we have it. We have our little red dot site. Now, you can see that it has all of these no image selected thing. That is fine. That's exactly what we want. You're just going to double check, run a little pass over to make sure there's no gaps or holes or none of the vertices are flipped. And everything looks all right. It looks like the normals are okay. So we're going to File, Export as a NIF, and then select where you want to export that to. Now, before we move on to the next step, it is very important to note the file structure that you're going to want for your mod. You may want to set this up into your Fallout directory. You're going to need a meshes folder, a materials folder, a textures folder. These are all going to help Fallout and the Creation Kit point exactly to where your files should be. And it's one of the only ways that Creation Kit can really read the files. So this is how your files need to be set up in order for it to work properly. All right, now that our mesh is all ready to go, we actually want to set up the textures and materials before we head into NifSkope. That way we have them all ready when we start assigning file paths. So we're going to grab our OBJ, not our Nif, but the actual object that we created from Blender, and we're going to drag it over into Substance Painter. Now you may be using Photoshop or GIMP. There will be different tutorials on how to do that, which won't be covered in this video. Again, this is specifically for Substance Painter, but it should be pretty easy to follow if you want to head over to any other tutorial to learn GIMP or Photoshop. Now, if you are using Substance Painter, we're going to open this up. We're going to set our resolution to 2048 because I want my textures to be 2K. And then I'm going to click OK. And there is our object, looking nice and fine. The very first step that we're going to want to do is bake our textures onto this thing. So we're going to head over to Texture Set Settings. We're going to scroll down until we see Bake Mesh Maps. And we're going to go ahead and bake selected textures. Wait just 1 second. Me from the past forgot one crucial detail. When you set to bake your textures, make sure to set your output size to the resolution that you want to export to. Idiot from the past left it at 512 when we actually wanted it 2048. So just remember that when you're baking your textures, set it to the texture size that you want, or else it's going to be really low res when you get it in game. Technically, you can be a little bit more picky as to what exact textures you want to be making, but I just play it safe and grab all of them because when we export, we're going to export just the ones that we need. So here you can see we have some baked lighting onto our nice little red dot here. So now we're going to actually add some textures. So if you're using Substance Painter, you can play around with this and texture it however it is that you want. All right, perfect. Now that we've got our texture all set up, we're going to we have one more thing to do. We're going to head to Steel Painted because the roughness is going to be super shiny in game. It's very hard to get a hold of in Substance Painter, but we're going to throw that all the way up to about 0.8. You'll see it turns really dark in here, but it'll still be relatively shiny once we actually take it into Fallout. We're going to go ahead and save our project. And then once it's saved, you're going to need to export these files. Now, the key to exporting is how you actually set up your textures. You're going to need to create your own Fallout preset from Substance Painter, and it's going to look something like this. You're going to have 3 output maps, your diffuse map, normal map, and your specular map. The diffuse map is going to have the full RGB scale of the base color. That's going to be what actually applies the colors to the texture. You're going to have your normal map, which is going to have the normal. You can choose DirectX or OpenGL. And then you're going to set up separate RGB channels. We won't be using blue. We're just going to be using red and green. That's what's going to give you your actual specular map. And then from the red channel, we're going to choose specular, and green channel, we're going to choose glossiness. Once you have that, save that, and then you can export, and it will export 3 files, your diffuse, normal, and specular, which will be ready to be converted into DDS files that we can then turn into a material. For now, you're just going to go ahead and export these, and they will be saved as a PNG file. Now at this point, whether you use Photoshop, Substance Painter, or GIMP, we should be at the same place. We should have a diffuse map here, which is going to be, again, our color, our normal map, which is going to be a nice purple blob, and then our specular, which will be a really interestingly colored object with shades of browns and yellows, which will kind of determine how glossy or matte the object is. So from here, we're going to need to export as DDS files. Now, if you're using GIMP, I believe you can immediately export to DDS. I'm not sure, I haven't used the program. But for Photoshop, you actually need to download a plugin, which again, I'll have linked in the description below. So for each of these files, we're going to click File and Save As. And we're going to need to make sure to have our save type as DDS. From there, we're going to navigate to that textures folder that we set up before. Remember, you had the materials, the meshes, and the textures folder set up in your Fallout directory. You're going to want to throw this one into textures. Once you have that, name it properly and make sure that the end of it has _D so you know that it is the diffuse map. So we're going to go ahead and set this up here and save it. And you're going to do the same for each of the other textures. If you're using the exporting tool for Photoshop, you will be prompted with this menu here. You're just going to make sure that it's set to color map, have it set to BC7 format, and we're going to save it and make sure that it has the correct resolution that you want. You can see mine here is 2048 by 2048. It's good to go. So we're going to go ahead and click save. And then again, you're going to do the same to each of these other files. Just make sure that you preserve the _n and the _s for the normals and speculars, respectively. All right, now you've got all of your textures ready. So we need to set up a BGSM file. This is the material that's going to combine all of those together onto your 3D object and make it fit in the world like it's supposed to with the proper lighting and effects. So there's going to be a couple of steps to get this working for your first time. For starters, you're going to need a Bethesda Archive Extractor tool. Again, will be linked down in the description below. This is going to allow you to grab files from the game and open them up and see what's inside. And we're going to need this for a couple of pieces of this tutorial, so this is definitely an important tool that you're absolutely going to need for any Fallout or even Skyrim modding. Now you're also going to need a material editor, specifically the BGSM material editor. That will also be linked down in the description below. And for starters, you're going to grab a file that's similar to the file that you're going to be making. So we're looking for materials, so we're going to find a material inside of Fallout 4's directory. So from Bethesda Archive Extractor, we're going to click Open File. We're going to find where our Fallout is located. We're going to head into it and then into data. We're going to scroll down for a little bit until we find Fallout 4 Materials BA2. We're going to open that right up. Now we're going to make sure to click Select None. We don't want to extract everything right now, but we are going to extract something that resembles what we're adding. So in this case, we're adding a sight to the combat shotgun. We're going to find another sight for the combat shotgun. So we're going to open up Weapons, scroll down to Combat Shotgun, and then right here we see Combat Shotgun Reflex Sight.bgsm. That's the material we're looking for, so we're going to click that and then click Extract. We'll go ahead and extract to the desktop so that you can see everything right here, and bam, there we have a new Materials folder up at the top left. The Materials folder will actually give you a pretty good idea of how your mod should be structured as well. If we open that up, we will have the Materials, Weapons, Combat Shotgun, and then the BGSM. So here you can see your BGSM file. We're going to right click, have Open With, choose another app, and then you will search for wherever you downloaded your BGSM material editor. You can see mine is already selected, and you make sure to have always open this app with .bgsm files. Click OK, and there we have it opened in the BGSM editor. We can go ahead and close out of that other folder. From here, we're going to set up the material. So we're going to leave every other setting the same. These are all set to a reflex sight for the shotgun, so we want to keep those. The only thing we're going to be changing are the materials themselves. So you're going to head over to the Material tab. You're going to click these dots. Now make sure that your textures are in your correct textures folder in your Fallout directory so that this thing knows where to read them. So for the first one, we're going to set up our diffuse map. We're going to head over to where we saved our textures. And here we can see my close red dot.dds. Open that up. And then do the same for the normal, and then again for the specular. And then that's it. Make sure that when you save as, so we don't overwrite the combat reflex. And we're going to give it a new name. We'll give it the closed red dot like I've been giving everything else. And we're going to make sure that that goes into your Fallout 4 data directory, into our materials folder that we set up, and then along with all of my other BGSM files. Save. And now your material is ready, along with your textures. So now we need to finish up our mesh. So now we're going to need to use NifSkope. Again, link will be in the description. And we're actually going to need to open up two separate instances of it. One to get your NIF that you created earlier with Outfit Studio, and one to have a NIF that's already implemented into the game, because they're going to need to be a little bit different from each other. So we're going to open up our handy friend, the Bethesda Archive Extractor, once again, and this time you're going to be looking for a NIF similar to what you're looking for your attachment. So since we're doing that reflex sight again, we're going to open up our Fallout directory once more, and then head over to where they keep their meshes. Here we are, Fallout 4 meshes.ba2. Open that up, select none. We're going to scroll down to meshes, weapons, combat shotgun, and then here we are. Around here somewhere is the combat shotgun, not rifle. Make sure to grab the right thing. There it is, combat shotgun reflex sight. Now you'll notice there's actually three NIFs here: the sight dot, and the sight dot _1. _1, I believe, is going to be the one with the circle. We're just going to grab regular combat shotgun reflex sight dot. Grab that and extract it. We'll extract it to the desktop one more time, which should give us a new meshes folder right next to our materials folder. Give that 1 second and it's done. So here we have our meshes folder. We're going to open up that mesh. You see we have a reflex site NIF, and we're going to plop it into this one on the left here. And there is the reflex site that's already in Fallout 4. Now we need to grab the NIF that we made earlier in Outfit Studio. Here we are with the close red dot NIF, which you can see is right here, looking a little bit sideways and wonky, and it's going to get even weirder when we turn it into this NIF over here. So grabbing our new object that we created, we're going to select it until you see the nice green highlight on everything. We're going to right click, select block, and copy branch. Then we're going to head over to this node right here on the left. On the reflex site that's already in the vanilla game, we're going to open it up. We're going to right click on 0 space 9 node, block, and paste branch. And you'll see that we have a giant reflex site that is sideways and huge, and we're going to need to do some work to get this looking correct. So really simple stuff. Going to actually, now that we have this over here, we can go ahead and close out of the one on the right, and you can even delete that old NIF file after you're done saving everything on your new NIF. Once that's done, go ahead and delete the old one. You won't need that ever again. So we're going to close out of there. Don't worry about saving it. And then we can expand this a little bit. So here we are with our NIF that is a little bit misshapen. We're going to click on it, right click, transform, and edit. And you're going to mess with these values until you get it to where you want. Our scale is 1. We're going to move that to 0.1. I believe that's what's been working for me and the scale that I've been using. All right, now we've got it just about where we want it. We're going to go ahead and click accept. That looks to be just about where we want it. It's going to be a raised scope, which is going to cause some issues for us later, but that's all going to be fixed in the creation kit. So as you can see, we have our nice structure here. We have a good handful of tri-shapes, including our own. Ours is going to be the BS sub-index tri-shape. We're going to want to select that and head down to name here. And then we're going to change that into the name that we actually want. So instead of cube, we're going to name that one into closed RDS for us, just so we know what it is. Click OK, and that's it. We're going to scroll down just in case. Sometimes when you export from Outfit Studio, it can add a skin modifier here, right here where it says skin. You can see mine has none. I've been lucky enough that that has never happened to me. However, I know that for some people, if you export from Outfit Studio, it can give you a skin as it thinks it's clothing. You're going to want to delete that and make sure that there's nothing here. Okay. The next step is actually applying our textures that we made earlier. So by now you should have your textures and material set up. We're going to click the drop down on our BS sub-index tri-shape and find BS lighting property. We're going to select that. And then right here, there will be another TXT, and we're going to set up the material path for where our site is located. So for me, that's going to be materials, and that's how yours should start as well. Backslash, for me, it goes to the folder deck, and then the name of our folder, which you may want to cross-reference to make sure you type it exactly correct, or else it's not going to work. So I'm going to head over there just to make sure, and mine is going to be named closed red dot BGSM. Make sure you include that again, just so it points to the right path. Then select OK. And then, now that that's set up, we're going to start deleting stuff that we don't want. Now be very careful. I particularly chose to do a scope for this tutorial to show you how you can also get a reticle on here, because if you put your NIF onto an existing scope, there's actually a reticle included, so you don't have to do any dirty work. So we have our closed red dot site here. We want to make sure that stays where it is. We can delete the combat shotgun reflex site. We no longer need that. You're going to right click it, block, and remove branch. Not just remove, because we want to get rid of all of its extra stuff too. The same is going to go for the glass. We're not going to be using that glass. Technically, if you're making a site, you don't even have to add glass if you don't want to, unless you want it to look really, really nice. It's kind of up to you and what you want to do with your mod. So we're going to remove branch from that glass as well. And block, remove branch. And so now we're left with 2 tritium dots here. One of which is right there, and the other you can see is reversed. That's actually going to make it appear from the front side. I actually don't want that one, so I'm just going to remove that branch as well. All I really want is the tritium dot that we can see from the rear. Now, as you can see, that's where the dot is, and we want it up here. So we're going to have to apply a transform just like we did for our mesh itself. And we're going to bring that guy up a little bit on the z-axis. That's close. Let's try a 0.6 there. That's pretty close. I think it's actually going to be a 0.5 for us. That looks nice and centered. Not bad at all. maybe even a little bit higher. Perfect. All right, so that's where our dot's going to be. Now, if you were to just leave it like that, that's going to be a green dot, which some people like. For me, this is a red dot site, so we're going to make it red. So we're actually going to open up that tri-shape. We're going to click BS shading property, and we're going to head down to this emissive color here. We're going to double click it right there on the wheel, and then we can actually change the color around to red. Click OK. Bam, now our site is red. Easy. Now, just to make sure that everything's nice and cleaned up, we're going to right-click in our space here, click Sanitize, Reorder Blocks, and then we can File, Save As, and make sure to save into your Mesh folder. This should be your only mesh for this object, and it's going to be a NIF file. So we're going to Save As, head over to Meshes, and then here's the rest of my meshes. This is specifically for the combat shotgun, so I'm going to throw it in that folder for me. And then rename it and make sure that it retains that .nif at the end. And just to make sure everything works, we're going to open this up in Creation Kit in just a second. So we're not going to close out of NifSkope just yet. We need to test this thing in Creation Kit. So find wherever you saved your file, which again should be in your data directory for it to open in Creation Kit, and double click it. If you already have Creation Kit installed, it will open up there with all of the textures hopefully applied correctly. So again, one more time, just go ahead and double click your NIF and let's see what happens. It's opening up the Creation Kit, and bam, it worked just fine. So as we can see, my site is now in-game, facing the correct direction, and even has a nice little red dot in the center there. Now, to make this more realistic, you would like to do a glass and transparency and all that fun stuff, but for now, this works. And you can see that we have some really important information here. It has C-scope child. Now, this is because we picked a scope as our attachment point. That's why you want to make sure to grab a NIF that already resembles something that you're adding into the game. So this thing is actually ready to be taken into the Creation Kit and edited itself. So you're going to want to close out of this and open up the Creation Kit itself. Once you open up Creation Kit, you'll be prompted with this big scary menu. If this is your first time in the Creation Kit, don't worry, it's not as scary as it looks, but it can be a little bit intimidating for your first time. Once you reach this window, you're actually going to click this little file button here, not the file itself, but the actual folder underneath it, to load which plugin files we're using. Now, if this is your first time entering here, you're going to double click Fallout 4 and then click OK. And you're not going to set an active file because you want to be making your own ESP. If you're returning to an ESP, you're going to scroll down and find your ESP. For me, it's DAC pack here because I'm adding into that pack. And we're going to set that as the active file. So again, if this is your first time in here, don't worry about that part. Just open up Fallout 4 itself. And whenever you save, it will create an ESP. So we're going to open up my DAC pack and click OK. And then we have a very lengthy loading process. Go ahead and wait for that to finish, and then we'll catch up in a second here. And then finally, after what feels like forever, the Creation Kit is open. So from here, we're going to actually start looking for stuff. So because we are making a reflex site, in my case, I'm going to search for reflex sites. So using this object window on the left here, I'm going to type in REF. There, so we start with typing in reflex, and we're going to be looking for three things in particular. The co-mod, which is going to be how you actually craft this thing, the misc mod, and then the mod itself. And we're going to be making those three files, and that's all we really need to get an attachment into the game. So since we're doing a combat shotgun, we're going to find here combat shotgun reflex site. We're going to grab that one right there. Combat shotgun scope site reflex. We're going to start with the misc mod. We're going to make the miscellaneous item that is our reflex site. So we're going to double click that, and we're going to rename the ID from site reflex to, let's say, closed red dot. For mine, name it whatever it is for yours. And then you're going to set the actual name here. So name is combat shotgun tritium site. That's a little bit of a feature of my mod. It should say reflex site on your end. And we're going to replace that with combat shotgun closed red dot site. And that's really it for this area. We're going to click OK, and we're going to say create a new form. Yes, this is going to make it into a whole new object rather than replacing the vanilla object. So we're going to click yes. Now we're going to set up the mod itself. We're going to scroll down past misc mod. You will find mod. We're going to grab combat shotgun reflex site again, double click it. And this is the most important screen out of all of these, in my opinion. We have to rename this once again. So make sure to keep the underscore scope underscore, and we're just going to rename it to, again, closed red dot. And then you can name your site here, which again, as we know, is closed red dot site. And then we're going to select the file. So here is where the model is. If we click edit on that, it's going to bring up the model that already exists. We're going to click edit here again to find our file. And for me, that's going to be closeRedDot.nif. And ta-da, there it is. We're going to click OK. We're going to scroll down here to where it says loose mod. We're going to click that drop down and find ours. So if we look long enough, we will find closed red dot. There it is. And then from there, you are good. Double check everything just to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. We are using a scope, so it says AP gun scope. That's the attach point. And then we have some settings over here. Now, you may not want to mess with these a ton on your first mod, but there is something I know that I will need to mess with this one. Given how tall my site is, we're going to need to mess with the zoom data right here, specifically the camera offset Z, the one on the bottom. This first one is going to be your field of view. This one down here, zoom data camera offset Z, is how tall your camera is. And I believe that you set the minimum up, the camera goes up, which means that it lowers your sight. Now mine's pretty high, so I'm going to set it from 0.6 to a full-on 2.0. And we'll see how that looks in game, and I'll show you how to tweak that if you need to, because your site probably isn't going to line up perfectly the first time unless you have the dot set exactly where it was in the original model. That should be everything in the object side of things, so we're going to click OK and create new form. Yes. The last step is going to head up to this co-mod, and this is how we're going to craft the item. We're going to select the combat reflex sight one more time, double click it. This one takes a second to load up. And then once it's there, we're going to rename once again into closed red dot. And then right here where it says created object, we're going to select ours. We're going to scroll up for a little ways and we will find our closed red dot miscellaneous mod. And there it is. And then from here, you can also change the required items. So you can see it costs adhesive, aluminum, glass, nuclear material, etc. We'll actually delete the nuclear material from mine because mine is not a tritium site. It's an actual reflex site. There we go. Then we can click OK, create new form, yes. And that is it. If done correctly, now your item should be in the game. So we're going to click File and Save. Now, if you're launching Creation Kit on its own, I believe that you get to choose a location as to where you save it to. But if you're launching it through a Mod Organizer 2 like I am here, you can actually save it into your overwrite files and then select all of those files to move into their own zipped folder later. But for now, we'll leave it in overwrite just for testing. So we're going to click Save. And now it has saved my ESP. And we're going to head in game and see if it worked. All right, we've loaded up in game. Let's see if we can actually craft this thing. Here you can see some attachments that we've already done for this mod project already, just so you know that it does in fact work. But let's see about the one that we just made. So we're going to head over to Sites. And there we can already see close red dot site. And there it is. Now, it may be a bit darker than I'd like. It looks like it's even raised up a little bit higher than I want to on the Picatinny rail there. So these are all things that can be fixed. I may even want it a little bit more forward on the gun. When it comes to positioning like that, you're going to make those changes in NifSkope. You're going to affect the X, Y, and Z values to get it positioned to where you want it. It looks like the scale is pretty decent. I may want to turn it down by like 0.1. And then again, the textures are a bit off. I'd like them to be more along the metal of the suppressor there. So that's something that I would change just the DDS files, not the materials, because it will point straight back to those DDS files. As long as you overwrite them, everything will be fine. So those are all changes that I can make afterwards, but we did get an object into the game. Let's go ahead and craft this thing and see what it looks like in first person and see how our alignment is looking. That's actually not that bad. Again, this is just a rough draft scope. This probably isn't what it's going to look like in the full release of the mod, but this is just to give you an idea as to how it works in getting items into the game. Definitely want to rescale this thing a little bit and definitely change up those textures and clean up the mesh just a tad, but this will give you an item in game. So if you want to try this yourself, it does work. And it looks like we actually got pretty close when it comes to that sight alignment. So I hope that helped, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you can start your mod creation journey soon. This is definitely a really fun hobby to get into. It has been an absolute blast learning how to do this stuff on my own, and I love getting better and adding really cool stuff to the game. the more that I learn, the more tutorials I want to pump out for you guys to share all of the knowledge that I've been gaining about this stuff. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Drop a rating if you did enjoy, and if you want to see more videos just like this, consider subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace! And really quick, I'd like to make a shout out to all of our patrons. Your donations are greatly appreciated and really help to support the channel and videos just like this one. So again, thank you.